probably picture it the same way everyone does. Sun goes down, the fire gets lit, and within an hour or so, an entire tribe of ancient humans is fast asleep, exhausted from a day of hunting and gathering, waiting for the sun to rise again so the cycle can repeat. No screens, no stress, no artificial light pulling them off schedule. Just a clean, simple, almost robotic rhythm dictated by the sun. It sounds logical, it sounds natural, and it is almost completely wrong. Because when researchers actually went looking for proof of this so-called natural bedtime, they didn't find a fixed schedule at all. What they found instead was something far stranger, and it raises an obvious question. If ancient humans weren't going to sleep the moment it got dark, what were they doing instead? And why do we assume they weren't? To answer that, scientists didn't rely on guesswork or old assumptions about cavemen. They studied modern hunter-gatherer communities, groups in places like Tanzania and Namibia, who still live largely without electricity, artificial light, or clock. If any group on Earth was going to reveal what a truly natural sleep pattern looks like, it was them. Researchers strapped sleep tracking devices onto members of these communities and monitored them around the clock for weeks. This wasn't a guess about the past. This was as close to a live demonstration of ancient sleep as science could get. And the first result immediately broke the myth. There was no universal bedtime. People in these communities didn't drop off to sleep the moment the sun disappeared. In fact, they usually stayed awake for another 3 to 4 hours after dark, talking, telling stories, tending the fire before drifting off well into the night. The sun wasn't flipping some internal off switch. Something else was clearly steering the timing, and that something turned out to be temperature. As the night cooled, dropping body temperature nudged people towards sleep far more reliably than darkness alone. So if they went to bed later than we assumed, surely they made up for it by sleeping longer, right? Also wrong. On average, these communities slept around 6 to 6.5 hours a night, not the 9 or 10 hours many people imagine when they picture a natural pre-industrial lifestyle. And here's the part that really undercuts the myth. They didn't experience anything resembling modern insomnia. No lying awake anxious about not getting enough sleep. No dread about tomorrow's alarm. The condition barely registered as a concept in these communities at all. Now, researchers were careful to draw a line here, and it matters. There's a completely separate, much older body of research on pre-industrial European sleep habits, showing that people in medieval Europe often split their night into 2 segments with a period of quiet wakefulness in between. That's a real historical pattern, but it comes from a totally different population, a totally different climate, and a totally different lifestyle than modern hunter-gatherers. Mixing those 2 stories together is where a lot of the popular myths about natural sleep actually come from. Which brings us to the real question. If humans never had one fixed, universal bedtime, where did our obsession with a rigid schedule come from? The answer isn't ancient at all, it's industrial. Once factories needed workers on the floor at the same time every single day, and once artificial lighting made it possible to ignore sunset entirely, society built an entire system around synchronized schedules. 9 to 5, the fixed alarm. The idea that everyone should be asleep by 10 and up by 6, that's not biology. That's roughly 2 centuries old, built for factory shifts, not human bodies. So what does this actually mean for you? It means the guilt you might feel for not falling asleep the second your head hits the pillow, or for naturally waking up groggy at 6 a.m. while your coworker bounces out of bed, isn't a personal failure. It's chronotype, your body's individual internal clock, and it varies significantly from person to person. Some people are genuinely wired to peak in the morning. Others don't fully switch on until the afternoon. Neither one is broken. Neither one is lazy. They're just different biological settings shaped by genetics most people never think to question. And that's really the takeaway here. The 5 a.m. productivity culture that treats an early rigid bedtime as the moral high ground isn't rooted in some ancient wisdom our ancestors lived by. It's a manufactured system dressed up as natural. The real ancient pattern was flexible, temperature-driven, shorter than expected, remarkably free of the anxiety we've attached to it today. Maybe the healthiest thing you can do isn't forcing yourself into somebody else's schedule. Maybe it's finally listening to the one your body was already running long before the alarm clock existed.